Hey everyone, it's Merja here, and Bradyn is joining me today once more. Bradyn is my friend and peer and colleague, and also a fellow INFJ. So today we are wrapping up the facets within the preference pairs with the JP preference pair, so the judging, perceiving preference pair. And just for those of you who haven't tuned into these videos, real quick, a preference pair is a pair of words that are not exactly the opposites of each other, but they describe different ways of operating in a cognitive way. So for example, we have judging and perceiving, we have introversion, extroversion, we have sensing, intuition, and we have thinking and feeling. So today we're talking about the judging, perceiving preference pair within the Myers-Briggs typology, and we'll also be getting into the facets, the facet pairings of the global step 2 MBTI assessment. So, Bradyn, are we ready to jump into it? Do you have some questions? Shall I
Yes.
do a screen share once more?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's do this. All right. So, much like before with as you can see here, judging as an INFJ, these are my results. And on the judging side of things, which is on the left-hand side of the page, we have systematic, planful, early starting, scheduled, and methodical. And the perceiving preference, underneath that, we have facets, casual, open-ended, pressure-prompted, spontaneous, and emergent. And what we've done in the past is we've gone into a little bit more detail on these particular facets. Is that something you want to tackle today, Bradyn?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
So what are facets? What does that mean, Maria?
Yeah, so these facets here, if we look at the judging preference and we look at these judging preference facets here, systematic, planful, early starting, and scheduled, and methodical, they are ways within which the judging preference comes across in our lives. And on the right-hand side, under the perceiving preference, we have the facets casual, open-ended, pressure-prompted, spontaneous, and emergent, and they all are a facet of the perceiving preference. So they are ways that the perceiving preference shows up in the world. So what's really interesting is that you look at this scale here from systematic to casual. As you can see, and as I mentioned before, they're not exactly the opposites of each other. Much like with judging and perceiving, they're not the opposites, but it's almost like a scale of preference, whether you prefer to be more systematic or whether you prefer to be more casual. So if we look at the systematic, there's orderly, structured, dislikes diversions, whereas the casual person would have relaxed, easygoing, and would welcome diversions. And this is actually one of we're both INFJs here. We have a lot of INFP clients as well. If we look at this particular facet pair, systematic casual, that's actually usually how people think about when they think about judging and perceiving. So this tends to be the biggest indicator of what people think judging or perceiving is, which of course it's not. It's just one facet pair.
Right.
So for me there, I'm in preference with systematic, but relatively close to mid-zone. So I'm not rigid, but I do dislike diversions. I do dislike diversions. So whereas a lot of INFPs in my life, they like the diversions. They're always like, let's go and explore everything. And I'm like, no, it doesn't really fit my schedule, so no.
Yeah, work hard, play hard,
Right. But I'm not over the top systematic either, as you can see here. So I can have a lot of flexibility when it comes to especially the people that are important in my life and so on.
Yeah.
Where do you kind of fall on that systematic casual scale?
I'm in preference, which is under the judging function. So I am on number 5 in preference.
Wow. So
Very
you
rigid.
like a lot of So when I was saying, I have to be somewhere, you were like
Yeah.
nodding.
Yeah.
It seemed like you were really
Yeah.
relating to that.
I would like to elaborate a little bit with an example for why
Go for it.
I feel like being so systematic works for me and makes a lot of sense for me, because I'm a mum of 4 children and I'm studying two
Yeah.
lots of full-time studies. I have to have the very systematic, orderly approach in order, I see it as an operation for a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And so while that might be overwhelming
Yeah.
for a lot of people, this is what works. It's how it works. Yeah.
So it's so interesting because when you're systematic and when you're orderly, you're not afraid to take on more commitments. And it really shows in your life. You have 4 kids and you have 2 full-time studies that you've undertaken. So you're not afraid of committing your time because you're very ordered and systematic in certain ways. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
interesting. So with the casual, of course, the benefits of having the casual preference in these facets comes down a lot to being able to just be easygoing and like let things flow. So you tend to be more in your flow, or that's how it seems. Of course, systematic people are actually in their flow when they are organized, and casual
Mm.
and perceiving style people are more in their flow when they welcome diversions, and they have different ways of, they're not attached to the schedule or the outcome as such.
Yeah.
So neither is bad, it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's jump into the planful open-ended if you're ready.
Yeah. Of course.
So the planful person likes to plan in advance, think ahead, and make firm plans. That's me. You can see I'm there at 5, very polarized. Whereas the open-ended person likes to go with the flow, live in the moment, and make more flexible plans. So if we look at setting up a dinner party as an example, when I set up a dinner party, I do, I know where everybody's going to sit. I know I'm first of all, I get obviously the date locked in. Then I send the invitation. Then I want to know who's coming and when and what time, and then what dietary issues they might have or challenges they might have or preferences. And then I'll make sure that when they come in that they'll have that I've done most of the work around the food, and then it's just bits and pieces, but then I can focus on actually being with the people. Then I make sure that I have their favorite drink if I know what their favorite drink is, and I'll offer them a drink. And then when it's time to eat, I'll invite people in an orderly manner to join me at the table.
Yeah.
But where they sit is really dependent on what kind of conversations I think that they would really prefer. So I can put people
Right.
together who are likely to have similar levels of energy and willingness of conversation. So you don't want to put introvert, extrovert, because all the introverts are going to sit back, and
Yeah, that's
just
true.
listen to the extroverts talk at each other or talk with each other or at sometimes. But so that's my way of planning. Whereas, for example, my partner, he goes, okay, I'm gonna make 4 or 5 different dishes. They're gonna arrive around this time. If I don't make one of the dishes, that's cool. But I just want to cover the vegetarian, the gluten-free, the usual kind of things. And people can
Mm.
sit wherever they want, and they'll come whenever they come, and then we'll just do whatever. And I'm not saying that in a way that he doesn't care. It's just his way is a lot less stressful at times
Yeah.
because because you're not having to be on all the time. You can actually
Yeah.
relax and just enjoy the space. And if everything doesn't go perfectly, then so be it. So
Yeah.
where are you on the planful open-ended scale?
I'm the same as you in
No.
preference and at 5. Yeah.
So you and I would have organized, but perhaps a little bit rigid dinner parties.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of organizing it, planning it, scheduling it, yes. But
Yeah.
when I do find that with my lived experience of doing a lot of event planning, when that happens, people tend to relax, and
Yes.
feel really welcomed into such
Yeah.
a structure, you know, of being able to sit in certain places, or that the food was ready when we said it was going to be.
Yes.
And
Especially
following
if you have
through.
kids,
Well,
it
yeah,
makes it
exactly.
like
Yeah,
you have a childminder or whatever, and you have to be home
yeah,
at certain time. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, how it's like we have to plan to be relaxed. We have to be systematic so that we can be casual.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So early starting pressure prompted. Now this is an interesting facet pair, because this actually shows a lot of how people want to, especially with work, how people actually operate the best way for them. And I used to get really frustrated when people didn't start early. As you can see, I have a score of 5 here in preference. And, you know, because I'm so motivated and beginning straight away and having steady progress, and I do find late starts very stressful. I used to, at work in professional settings, I used to project this onto my colleagues, and they might be pressure prompted. So I thought they were just, mucking around with whatever and not taking their job seriously. But that didn't mean that they didn't meet the deadlines. They did. It's just that they were pressure prompted. So they were motivated
Yeah.
by the impending deadline, and they were only like spurts and
Yeah.
bursts and of energy and ideas and spurts of action. And then they'd be super bored and and
Lose
not
interest
engaged in the
almost.
process if they had to start early.
Yeah.
So where do you find yourself in the early starting pressure prompted?
I am in preference, same as you, at sitting at number 5.
So
Yeah.
you're hardcore judging so far. So you're at 5 on the first.
There's more to come. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have an example for us on that for yourself that's been meaningful?
Yeah. Well, my mum is an INFP, so same as Peter. And because we're both INFJs, I think we can relate to this. But whenever something comes up, like say with the dinner planning, or a big event like a first birthday or 21st birthday, culturally for us, these are big events, and we mean 80 or 100 people. I've already started planning that 6 months ahead. And so when I present things or ideas to mum, for example, where I allocate a time, I'll be like, have you done this yet? She'll be like, no, I haven't gotten around to it. And it does feel like where you said we project that, because I definitely do. It's kind of it can definitely be a projection of how different we are. But I understand that she will get it done in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also, I think, comes into a play where we're that perfectionist in a way, because if you had started it early, the end result would have been how I envisioned, rather than just settle for whatever, you know what I mean? Like if it was a cake or something, you know. I think that is an example, but
it is an example. It's a great example, and it kind of brings me to the next point as well, that so let's just say that your mother asked you to organize the birthday party. I don't know if she did or didn't, but let's just say that she did. If she asks you to do this, then she should do what you're asking her to do, right? So she can't hold you hostage
Right.
your process, if she's asked you to do it, she can't hold you hostage on that.
Yeah.
You know, the same way if I'm like, I have a scheduled day, but I've agreed to say go for lunch with my partner, I don't get to change that then, that no, I have to be home at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like we have to be careful that we don't project, that we understand what the difference is and that we're realistic about the difference, so that we don't end up
Yes.
projecting onto the other person that they should be like us, because they're not.
Yeah,
Especially
because
with
they're
the,
not. Yeah.
and this is, yeah, and this is one of the big things, especially with INFJs and INFPs. We actually are completely different when it comes to this particular preference pair, but also how it shows up. So
Yeah.
this is where it gets really interesting, the differences between INFJs and INFPs. Not just
Yeah.
the actual functions, not just the 4 people within that are completely different, but and different positions, but also this
Mm.
perceiving, judging piece, which
And how it shows
actually
up
is
in a
most
simple example.
often, right, it's most often overlooked. You know, people just talk
Mm.
about the 4 people within, or they just talk about the like the preferences or the cognitive functionalities,
Right.
and they overlook these letters, these 4 letters, and I think it's a disservice, because there's so much more in this than there is in you know,
Yeah, absolutely. This
in
is
the,
why I think it's so
yeah,
amazing to be able to have the this assessment, the global step 2 assessment, done with you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that whole early starting pressure prompted piece, it's so important that we are clear about it and do kind of be honest and caring towards ourselves and trying to fulfill that need, but also making sure that we're not demanding that other people fulfill that need for us. So scheduled spontaneous, shall we move on to that? So the scheduled person, such as myself, wants a routine, makes lists, and like procedures, where spontaneous people like variance, so variety, um, also enjoy unexpected occurrences, like surprise parties and such. And they feel like procedures can be really limiting. So I'm here not to, like, I'm working on my spontaneity. I'm here in the spontaneous, like a little bit more at the spontaneous end of the schedule, but still scheduled.
Yeah.
I like to know about my surprises before they happen, so that I can plan
Plan a
plan for them,
reaction.
so that I can actually enjoy the surprise, right?
Right.
Where are you on this?
So I am on 5 in preference. And I must admit, when I did receive this result, um, uh, this was something that I wanted to work on.
Yeah.
And so at the time when I had done this, I obviously scored very in preference towards the 5. But I'm warming up to being more spontaneous, initiating that for myself. So it might be if there's a little bit of free time, taking the kids to the park to just slowly wean myself into it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
rather than constantly scheduling everything, because I think it's good, as particularly if you are a parent, or just sort of feeding into the kids being able to be surprised and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So having a bit of variety rather than being so scheduled and being upset, showing them that I'm upset because it's not going to schedule. Does that make sense?
Right. It makes a lot of sense. And especially that childlike wonder, that comes often through spontaneity. Like, you can't really plan it. You can't schedule, okay, from 8:15 to 8:17, I'm going to be having childlike wonder. about life.
Yeah.
It doesn't really
Yeah.
work that way. And it
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah.
doesn't work with kids. So
Exactly. Yeah. That's
yeah.
it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. The other thing that how it shows up for me is how how I want routine. And for example, my partner who's an INFP prefers variety. Is
Mm.
is we go for lunch every week, and we often go to the same restaurants. That is good for me. I'm good with that. But I already know what I'm going to have before we go to the restaurant. Whereas he wants to have a look at the menu and then decide. So it's easier, like if we ever go like get a good takeaway or something, it's actually easier for him to go and get the takeaway. I'll just tell him what I want because I already know. He can go and then decide there and then what the takeaway is. Whereas if we did it the other way around, if I went to get takeaway, if he didn't know what he wanted, so I'd have to call him when I get there and tell him what's on the menu, or have the conversation with him on the menu there and then decide. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
neither is wrong. It's just completely different way of operating.
Yeah. And I think you're probably one of the only women who seems to know what she wants from a restaurant, to know what she feels like eating.
Bradyn, like with the variant, with a two or three variants, I have, unless I'm on holidays, I have the same breakfast every morning.
Wow.
Every morning. And I don't want to change it because I want that breakfast and I know it'll set me up
Yep.
for the day.
For the
I
day.
make
Yeah.
this bread. Yeah, I make this bread from nuts and seeds, and
Right.
I want that, and I want pesto on it, and then I want baked beans. So in the winter, baked beans and eggs with that, or if
Nice.
it's the summer, then avocado and hemp seeds. Yeah,
Yep.
and that's what
Yep.
I want, and I don't want anything else.
Wow.
So yeah, so and it works for me.
Yeah.
Unless I'm on
Yeah.
holidays, in which case I don't care. Then I just eat whatever because
Whatever. Yeah.
I really don't care. Like the worst thing for me, I really don't care what it is. The worst thing for me is to not know what it's going to be. So it's like, I might go to a buffet, for example. So let's just
Yeah.
say that I'm away and I'm traveling, or I'm, doing a workshop somewhere or whatever. I'm staying at a hotel and there's a buffet breakfast. And I don't have a problem just taking whatever. It's not like I have to know it has to be this every morning. It's like I just have to know, I can make the decision really quickly what I want, just so long as I know what the options are. Often people say that, oh, if you only had to pick one cuisine for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I'd be like, is this supposed to be a hard question? Like, I don't have a problem with just eating the same thing for the rest of my life. This is not hard for me.
And if I know you well, it would be something that's very healthy, and you will, as you said, get the best out of your days from eating, what it is that you always
Yeah.
eat. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's it.
That's so funny.
What were you going to say? You were going to say
Oh,
something.
I was going to say that's probably where I've learned to be more spontaneous is with food. So sometimes I might say,
Oh, okay.
you just get whatever, for me. I'm happy for you to choose. So it takes it away, and be surprised, because most often than not, it would be like if someone's chosen something and I've picked what I have. It's like, oh, but I feel like a little bit of that, and then don't share.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get your own food,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I've learned to be a little bit spontaneous with, is in food choices. Yeah, especially when it comes to
Nice.
takeaway. Yeah.
Nice. Nice one. So finally, methodical emergent. And methodical, of course, is all about planning the specific tasks. Note any subtasks. And if you've done the 4 people within course, the 6-month transformational journey, you know there's actually a module on goal setting, or a part of a module that's about goal setting. And I talk about the, having the goal and then the sub goals. So you have the big goal, 5 sub goals, and 5 sub goals for each of the sub goals, right? So
it makes sense to me because I've done it.
So this is what this is all about. And of course, the step-by-step instructions and so on. Okay, so step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. If you saw my notes from this morning, I had two training sessions this morning on specific how to. It's like step this, step this, step this, step this. Whereas the emergent is more about like plunging in there and let the strategies emerge as you're doing the stuff, and also adapt, be willing to adapt. And that can be something that especially INFJs who have a high score on the methodical have really hard time adapting, that, or not adapting. Like, it's the capacity to adapt is there, but it just causes a lot of stress to adapt. Whereas the perceiving people just kind of roll with the punches, or roll with the feelings that they're having, and getting into it. Do you have a personal anecdote on that particular facet there?
I think it would be, because this is something that I've been also working on quite a bit. So I had scored in preference at number 5. So when you're talking about,
are you sure you're a judger? Like 5 on everything.
5 on everything. So I had to really be mindful of that's where I feel like the perfectionist tendencies really come into play, and how I would project that massively. So in a methodical approach, and obviously in an emergent, I think I would probably score a little bit different now, because some of the things that I've come to learn is that it is important to work with some of the things you cannot predict that are going to happen.
Yes.
Even in a methodical approach.
Yes, so and there's a lot of opportunity potentially in those emergent things, that like so much more than your original plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so you don't want to limit what it is that your one of your goals are, right? You don't want to just limit it, because it could, as you said, branch off. But one of the things is, when you are thrown off, you have already strategically planned methods. So then, when in that period of time that you've been thrown off, you can go back to, that's right. That's where I was at the last time that, I had experienced, or something threw me off, or some kids had broken an arm or something, for example, right?
Which happens, unfortunately.
So many things happen that you cannot predict. So it's really important, as much as it is to be methodical, because yes, good outcomes do come out of that, but also being able to work with what happens. So it's been an experience, but that would be my antidote, is embrace the methods, but embrace what comes your way also, because you can play off both.
Yeah, definitely. And I find it, you mentioned the perfectionism piece there, and for INFJs, this is where the perfectionism often comes from, is that it has to be done in a certain way, and if it goes in a way that's not imagined, then it must mean that there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
And for the INFP, because the INFP is creating the structures in the outside world, the perfectionism piece can also come from the emergent space, where that little 3-year-old outward thinking executive inner child is wanting to have some order in the outside world, and then something happens that emerges that was unexpected, then they may feel like they should have seen it coming had they planned it properly. So then they can make
Yes.
it about themselves as well and say, there must be something wrong with me because I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And then the focus shifts from the task into the self. And that
Yes.
can be very dangerous. And I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of the time, a lot of the INF perfectionism in particular is actually coming from this specific facet pair, methodical emergent. So
Right.
yeah, that's just an observation that I've had. Happy to be wrong, happy to learn more, but there are indications that are kind of pointing into that direction.
Mm. Yep,
Yeah.
I agree. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's wrap this final episode on these facet pairs on our biggest takeaway from today. What was your biggest takeaway from today, Bradyn?
I think in reflection of how much I'm in preference very rigidly in the judging function.
You know, you have a set of skills that, or potential, not necessarily skills, but you have a capacity that comes with that, which is highly organized. And
Yeah.
if you can take that as at the face value, that is actually really extremely valuable, just so long as you're not denying the other side. So the other
Yes.
facets there on the perceiving side.
Yeah.
And also the rigidity is only rigidity if it causes you stress. So if you can say, yeah, I'm 5 in preference in all of these, and I'm going to make the most out of it. Now you're probably
Yes.
it's not going to cause you as much stress because you're not focusing on
right.
what you should be instead of who you are. So be
Yeah,
who
that's
you are and
exactly
be
it.
that.
Yeah.
And then grow in the areas in a positive way that you want to grow, that feel relevant to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
that's exactly what my biggest takeaway has been. Thank you for summarizing it for me, which was where I was going. Yeah.
oh, I'm
And I think
sorry. I just jumped in
there. It's fine because it's true.
there. Oh, no.
I definitely see how it can be very beneficial and how it's important. But I also see how important it is to be out of preference and utilize some of the amazing things that can come out of it, experiences that I wouldn't have been open to. And I don't feel like I'm as stressed anymore because I saw it as an opportunity
Yes.
to learn and work on that. So yeah, most definitely compliments. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. My kind of biggest takeaway was just that reminder around the how we tend to project onto other people. You know, your story about the birthday party for your mother, that was really meaningful for me. That really reminded me of the gifts that are really on the right hand side on the perceiving space there. And it, as we were talking, it also reminded me of Peter, my partner, who's been a coach for 30 plus years. So even before there was even a word for a coach for in personal development industry, he's been doing that. And he is, I haven't done this, he hasn't done this, or he hasn't carried out, or he hasn't shared with me his results, which is not everybody's results are theirs to share. So, there's a boundary there. But as I'm reading these, casual, open-ended, making flexible plans and finding early start unstimulating, and in particular the adaptability and the emergent piece, I can see why he is so good in coaching, why he is such an incredible coach, because he is right there, and whatever emerges, so good. Let's work with that. And there's such, for those, you're an integration mentor in making right now, and for those of you who are tuning in who've done the integration mentor program with me, so I've trained you to become a coach or a mentor. you know that it's something I really embrace is to have this structure for emergence.
Yes.
So that there is so much space for that person to arrive exactly how they are,
Yes.
and that you have the flexibility to go regardless of your type.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much, Bradyn, for that. I have so appreciated these and enjoyed these conversations that you and I have had around these preferences.
Likewise. Yeah.
And I hope that you will join me on some other videos in the future, just and conversations on different topics and everything, because you're such a cracker. It's so
Thank you.
enjoyable for me to do these things. And as an INFJ, I like to communicate as well with other people, with the outward feeling. So
yeah.
Let's make good memories together, and thank you for all these memories and all these experiences that we've made throughout this series of
Thank you,
facets
Maria.
and within preference pairs. I really
I
appreciate it.
appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody curious about your facet pairs, your preference pairs and your facet pairs within the preference pairs? Give us an email at desk@marysomiloff.com, and we can let you know when the we actually have a proper 3-step system on how to get most of your personality profiling and really discovering yourself and decoding yourself for better life and better decisions in life. So if you're interested in that, you can send us an email, desk@marysomiloff.com. But I would like to ask anybody tuning into this video today, what was your biggest takeaway? I'd love to hear about that and your thoughts on what that might mean for you. All right. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, Bradyn.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it so much. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.